Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our Ignite session today. Uh, as you know, the topic for today is make and receive offers with Jake Lohser and Morgan Curtis of the Lohser Real Estate Group, and they will be walking you through some best practices, some of the things that they do in their business that has created a lot of success for them. And I hope that if you guys have any questions, you are welcome to unmute, pop in the chat. Don't be shy. Jake and Morgan might call you out and say like, hey, can you give us an idea on that? So it's interactive and that's the best way to learn. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Jake and Morgan. Unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for taking a little time out of your afternoon to spend with us, and hope you learn a little bit. We're excited to share a little bit on our end about areas that we've had success and failure and learn from those things when it comes down to making and receiving an offer. So as far as your Ignite process, you know, you've learned how to meet buyers, talk to buyers, meet sellers, talk to sellers, look at homes, do the searches, write the offer, or you found the perfect house, you wrote the perfect offer. Now what do you do? And you know, right off the bat, I want to share just a little something. I'm sure you've all heard about the shift. If you haven't, see me after. But I bring that up because, you know, I started real estate in 2005 when, you know, and through the years following that, you know, there was a significant shift. And I don't know if I necessarily changed anything as far as the way I presented offers or the way I received offers, because what you have to remember is what makes you successful in doing this is urgency, you know, and that doesn't change in a shift. You know, once you have that offer, you know it's right for your buyer. You're all about urgency, because the worst thing you can do is, you know, tell them to sleep on it and then, you know, the house is gone the next day. So, you know, regardless of what market we're in, you know, you remain with that urgency front of mind. And the other thing is, you know, communicating with your buyer, communicating with the other agent. You know, you want to do what is best for your buyer, and, you know, that also doesn't change. So I only say that because the things that we're going to be talking about today, I think hold true for the most part in a shifting market. You know, you'll know when it really shifts, and it'll just kind of be a natural progression where, you know, if you're on the listing end, you can, you know, you have to change your protocol as far as, you know, how you reach out to other agents and communicate. But for the time being, just keep that urgency and just do things according to the book, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. All right, you all have the this is where we're on unit 17. Quick note about our belief system. We all know about the Y4C2Ts. We wanted to mention a couple things that, you know, stick out to us as being important and kind of a tool in the tool bag to go to as far as, you know, being a Keller Williams agent that you can kind of lean on and, you know, will help you to winning offers, you know, and winning the sales scenario. So Morgan, what's important to you?
So, I mean, I think just straight off the bat, win-win or no deal. That's just how I go into every offer scenario, regardless of what side I'm on. The goal is we want to get the house under contract. We want to have everyone be happy and excited to move forward. So, you know, I want to be a win for the buyer. I want to be a win for the seller, but also I want to make sure that it's a win for Jake and I and our team and with the list agent, because it's going to be, you know, 30 to 45 days plus of working with each other. So we want everyone to be in good spirits and just feeling good about everything, just to ensure it is a smoother deal.
Yep. A big thing for me that sticks out about this is communication. I think one of the biggest mistakes that new agents make when writing offers or negotiating offers is they think that they have to kind of win and the other agent has to lose, or they're not serving their client. They have to be tough, they have to be shrewd, they have to, get more for their, buyer than someone else could, or, they're not doing their job. And in reality, the best deals lead to, the smoothest deals lead to the best outcomes for our clients. So the more you can communicate both with your buyer and the other agent on the other end, just talk to them, just be honest about, what you're trying to do and how important it is to your client. Ask questions, don't be afraid to look stupid or, whatever. You can be humble. It doesn't mean you're not confident. It doesn't mean you're not working for your client, but, I think that communication, seeking first to understand, is one of the most important things that can ensure success. Okay, you all have the agenda in front of you. Again, you've written the offers at this point, where this is all about preparing the offer, presenting the offer, and negotiating the offer and responding to the offer.
Yep.
Okay, so you want to go through the offer process real quick?
With the offer process, I think we all know, how it all works, but we just want to break it down again. So obviously we leave a property, we're super excited, the client's excited, they want to make an offer. Okay, what happens now? So we have 3 different outcomes. And, something I always prep my clients for, at the beginning, from when I'm first pre-qualifying them to, again, reminding them when they're going in to sign their paperwork, look, there are 3 different ways that this can shake out. Obviously the best and most, ideal goal is to have the seller just love our offer so much they just sign off on it, no questions asked, everyone's on the same page. If not that, then, try to get a conversation going and negotiate back and forth with whatever they come back and counter at, again, to get back to where everyone wins. And then the third and most depressing option is if it gets rejected. But if I have an offer that's just straight rejected and not a counter, I just go back and, try to represent something and do our own counter to see if we can get into conversation. But the worst case scenario is that they're in the same position that they were when they made the offer and that they don't have the house. And then with going through that too, obviously, with getting the offer accepted, that's when we start going through all the motions of, contract to close. All right. So preparing to write an offer. This is one of those things where, again, you want to make sure you keep your client engaged and also just educated. So we want to make sure that the property is still available, regardless of what kind of market you're in. You never know if it's still listed right in a good location and it's, attractive, it's going to be popular. So I always make sure, even before going on the showing, just making sure it is available. There hasn't been a status change.
So how would you do that? Like in a real life scenario?
So a real life scenario, other than checking the MLS and everything like that, I'm usually trying to call, text, email, message through showing time, somehow get in contact with the other agent, because obviously too, I have a feeling if a client's going to like the house or not, more so maybe than other things we've looked at. So I want to start really building that rapport, especially if it's an agent I haven't worked with before or we haven't worked with before, just to really kind of get them to know how I work and see how excited and determined I am to get something done for all of us. With that too, inquire, are there a lot of showings? It's been on the market for 3 days. Are there offers? Has it been on the market for a couple of weeks? What's going on? Did it come out of contract? You just really want to dig in and try to see, any information you can get from them just about motivation, certain dates, key things that client needs, and see again how you can get to a side where everyone is on the same page.
So let's do like a quick role play, because I know a lot of people, and like me, for example, the way I learn is kind of hearing real examples. So, again, you have the offer, you want to give your client the best chance to win the offer. That the best way to do that is to have all the information that you can to prepare, anything you need to change. So how would that conversation go with the agent when you get them on the phone?
So once I'm on the phone, I'm asking them.
So
Hi, Jake. How are you? It's Morgan calling from the Lohser Real Estate Group.
Oh, hey, Morgan. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a while.
It has.
Just wanted to check in about 123 Main Street, see what's going on. Anything you can tell me? I know it's been a pretty popular listing. My clients seem to be very interested about moving forward. So I just wanted to chat with you and see, what's important to them and what else, any small details
Sure,
that you
sure.
can tell me.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's actually, it's a super popular listing, a lot of activity. We haven't gotten any offers on it yet. A couple people have told me that they're gonna write and, ask for some documents, but they're just basically kind of circling now. So would love to do a deal with you.
Great. Is there anything the seller is looking for? If we were to move forward, like, are there certain dates that they need to hit for where they're moving? Any exclusions?
Yeah, one really important thing for them is, it's going to be a big move for them. So ideally, they have a few days after close before possession for them to, be able to get their funds and, get the movers and,
Sure.
and get all moved out. So that would be a huge plus.
Yeah, well, what's great about my client, he's in a longer lease, so that shouldn't be an issue. Just finalize and get on a date that works for everybody.
Awesome.
To get them to the next place.
Very cool.
Anything else I should know about the property?
You've read the disclosures. Okay. I think that's pretty much it.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. Hopefully I will be in touch soon. And one last question, is there a preference that you have of receiving an offer? Like, do you like dot loop? Do you like a PDF? Do you like both? How would you like me to send it to you?
That's a really great question, because actually my client, it's an elderly gentleman, and he not too great on computers, and I usually go over there just for his comfort level. I go over there and walk through everything. So if it's possible, you could either come and present it, or just I can print it out, I guess, and go
So
through it.
PDF probably sounds
Yeah.
like the easiest for you.
Do you know when you might be presenting that offer?
I'm in my car right now, so whenever I get home and can get to dot loop, and everyone can sign. So ideally later tonight,
Okay,
if not first thing in the morning.
great. Sounds good. Can't wait.
Thank you. All right. So
Did you covered everything?
yeah, I mean,
Okay.
pretty much else. And then, two, when you are preparing the offer, if you haven't already done so before seeing the house, just make sure you know your numbers and what, if there have been houses that have sold on the street or in the neighborhood. I always do, a CMA. A lot of clients maybe who've been looking for a while, they've kind of caught on and understand what's going on, but it's still nice to see, just some people are very much visual, need numbers. So always something good and support to what your recommendation is to move forward with the offer price. Any ahas, questions, comments from that part?
And really think, isolate that part of the deal, right?
Like
When
before the offer.
Yeah. So put yourself in the mind, if you've written offers, if you haven't written offers yet, anything you want to know about a question that is most important, or, anything to better your client's chances. Let's see.
I don't have a cursor.
Okay.
Nothing? Okay. We will move on. All right, so this is the next step. So obviously we've talked about an offer, we've talked to the agent, we've seen what's, learned a couple of things that are important. Now it's time to get to the nitty gritty. On the left is just a checklist of things that, again, you should always be looking for, double checking, dotting I's, crossing T's. On the right, I included, so what's something that I do with writing an offer, and when I'm just going through, and usually when I'm waiting for clients to sign off on paperwork, is I always present with some kind of, bulleted list, little letter to the list agent just about who we're working with, what the terms are. I try to make it as easy as possible. So that way, especially if we're in a multiple offer situation, it's just very easy. They can see my cover letter on top and know exactly what the key points are without having to sift through everything. It's especially helpful too with agents who either I haven't worked with or who are maybe not with our brokerage, who have different kinds of contracts. So keeps everything nice and easy up top. So, just again, going through what's our purchase price, the earnest money, for this client, as an example, I said, let's go a little bit closer to 1%. I was able to secure this client some closing costs, which was very exciting, especially after the couple of years that we've had of not really been able to do that. And then again, with this one, it has a similar situation that Jake and I were talking about where the sellers need to be there for a job. They're being relocated in March. So they wanted to close, beginning of March or end of February is given an option. And then they want to be there for a week. So that I learned after, so I don't have that in there, but that's why we were closing in March. Other things, just keep it clean. And yeah, just again, at the end, you can say like, that's it. Like, let me know, like, let's go, let's get a deal done, just always staying positive and being in conversation. So just again, including everything from, complete contract that's filled out, every box bubble, anything that needs to be checked off to the pre-approval letter. And I always like getting fresh pre-approval letters. If you're working with Sean and Dawn, they're very easy to get a hold of, and they will, happily plug in an address. That way it's very much personalized for that house. I always think that goes a longer way when I receive an offer. So I just try to make it as easy as possible.
So with that 1% earnest money, is that something that you always do, or you did for this special case?
Over the last couple of years, I've trended up with more earnest money. It just looks like, especially again, multiple offers, like we're looking a little more aggressive. We're ready to go. Sometimes I'll do a secondary earnest money amount after an inspection removal. Just trying to, look appealing to the seller, say, look, like we're willing to put this in the third party escrow account while we get going. And, we're serious with some of like maybe a more inexpensive property. I would trend to at least nothing less than $1,000, which is kind of customary.
And with the 5-day loan app, for those of us that don't know, what is that actually saying? What does that mean?
So that's just going, so with the pre-approval, you already have, you pre-approved, you could be looking at houses, you've gotten the initial blessing from the lender to do that, but then now is our formal loan approval. So getting any updated paperwork, we're getting them the contract. That's when we're diving in with everything, getting connected with title. So I like to keep that pretty short so we can just get into it. I like to send everything ASAP.
So with the 5-day loan app, it's, it's one of those things that can kind of get lost in the details. It's also something that you should make sure you go through with your buyer, make sure that they're prepared to make, formal loan application with their lender. Because, if the seller calls you on that, and you haven't done it, and they, the buyer thought that they had, 2 weeks to do it, or whenever they got around to it, it gets you, it could be one of those things that leads to a deal falling apart. So those sorts of, and I know you guys have probably beaten earnest money to death, but those sorts of details are super duper important to ensuring, a positive outcome.
Yeah. And again, that's what's nice about, if you have your checklist as you're writing your offer to start building one of these, it's also easier too to go through with your client. Like, again, these are the main points that we're looking for. Like we, are asking for a water hold. We want to use this title company. In this case, there's a really cool built-in, like fixture of a projection system. So I definitely wanted to ask for that, and a fireplace. Again, it's all the fine tuning that your client wants to, make sure that they know and they're on the same page, but also again, to give to the seller to be like, this is exactly what we're looking to do.
And with the financing terms, what's the difference between a pre-approval and a pre-qual?
Pre-qual is that they've kind of skimmed through, maybe they've checked bank accounts, stuff like that. The pre-approval is or even sometimes a verified pre-approval will be, they've given all their bank statements, driver's license, all the kinds of different things that the lender needs to really verify that they are ready to go. So pre-qualification sometimes can be used as a pre-approval from certain banks, but it's something you need to make sure when you're talking to anybody to be like, okay, have you actually looked at all your stuff for them? Or has it just been a couple of like, here's one like pay stub?
Yeah. I mean, it's, and we can get into it more from the receiving offer side, but super important to take your time and do your due diligence as far as making that as rock solid as possible. You want the seller to receive that pre-approval, ideally from a reputable bank, ideally, as detailed as possible with, at least the amount of money that you're writing the offer for, and just for it to look very solid, because it just takes a lot of guesswork out of it. It makes your client look stronger.
Yeah. Perfect. That's pretty much it. Other things and just tools, again, that can help your client, especially when going into multiple offers, or if you have a feeling something that might go into multiples. Towards the end of this checklist, you'll see things like a repair limit, or special clauses. A lot of times I'll cap, depending on the house, depending on the buyer, what kind of financial situation they're in, or what kind of like just shape the house is in. If it looks like it's in pretty good shape, they've done a lot of repairs, they've been very open and honest, ideally, on their disclosures. We'll say, hey, look, we're not going to ask you for repairs under $1,000. We're looking for the big health and safety items. If there's something big, then we can talk about it then. But, we try to keep it be like, look, we just want to get in. We want to see what we're buying. If we like it, great, move on. If we don't, then figure it out or we exit the contract. And then special clauses, again, it's always good to be familiar with an escalation clause saying,
Well, so let's change the example with the role play. So say when you ask, if there's any activity, I said, okay, well, actually, there is a ton of activity. We have 2 offers. We have 1 coming, verified. So, we're probably looking at Friday at 12 o'clock, for multiples. How would that change, the offer that you have on there?
That's when I would start to like really tighten up all these dates and stuff. 5 is still pretty much a day that I'll keep for a loan application. But if I can be in contact with the inspectors that I'm working with regularly and see whose schedule is looking good or more open, then I just try to tailor everything down. So that way we can get in, look appealing, try to close sooner if that's important to the seller. And then again, too, like, with the special clauses, not everyone takes an escalation clause. So would your clients be willing to look at escalation clause, even though they already have 2 offers in with a third?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Some people don't like escalation clauses. So I always like to ask that too before I just send one and then get the question of, is this the highest and best? Because we're not doing this.
Yeah, it's a great question, one you should always ask. And if you don't, I would assume that they do like escalation clauses, because what that does is obviously ensure, that it's going to bump up. If you have multiple offers, it's going to bump up the price. And
Right,
again,
like he's going to be
what's
more
best for your
inclined
seller.
to push that offer, based on everything else too, but be like, look, very much consider this one because it has, like, they're willing to do that or this kind of repair thing, whatever it may be.
Mhm. Anything else with multiples? Anything with inspections or anything you've?
I just like to be in contact with the list agent all the time.
Well, I'm saying with writing the offer, inspections like waiving.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't like, it's up to the buyer. If they want to waive the inspection, I always give them the option. I don't love doing it, but it's up to them. Again, we can also strike out things being like, we're not going to ask for repairs. It's a take it or leave it situation. It is their decision, not ours. And just sometimes it's really great and helpful, but other times it's just better to cover everybody.
Yeah, or the appraisal gap.
Right. Oh, right. Appraisal gaps have been really big over the last little bit. So saying, hey, we'll bring up to $12 extra $1,000 at closing in case, the property comes in under value.
Mhm.
So just like little things that go a long way.
Yeah. And again, we hardly see any of that anymore, that you would need to do that. And, if values continue to kind of slide, you definitely don't want appraisal gaps, but you just need to know about this stuff and have these conversations with the buyer if you find yourself in a multiple offer situation where, they don't want to lose the house. So you need to find out what's important from, the seller's agent, what's important to that seller, and do whatever you can to give the buyer their options, to make that offer as strong as possible.
One other thing too, I like doing in this period of time of writing the offer and preparing it and, just staying in touch with everybody involved. I like to go to the buyer's lender and get them an estimated payment. So that way they know at 310, it's going to look like this price. So that way we're not going in, writing this offer, it's all fantastical, then we get the actual payment during, we start going through the motions and it's like, oh my God, no, it's so expensive, we can't do that. So just another thing to always keep in mind, just stay in contact with everybody and make sure everyone's on the same page. Any questions, ahas from that we can answer?
There was one question in the chat. It looks like Alexis Santiago says, I'm newer and haven't had a deal yet, but I was wondering, how would you determine the amount to ask for when asking for part of the closing cost to be covered by the seller?
A lot of times I go to the lender and see what they recommend. Different loans have different limits. But usually on average, closing costs, at least for the buyer range that I'm in, are about $4,000 to $5,000. So as long as that falls underneath the percentage that we can ask for, that's kind of my beginning target number.
Yeah, I think too, it's important to know or remember that from a seller's perspective, it doesn't really, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. If you're raising the price and you're asking for closing cost, and that, raise and plus and minus equals the same amount, they don't care. So it really, you have the only reason you would go and ask for closing costs is if that will benefit your buyer. If they're really tight on their liquid funds and they only have enough for the down payment, and they have to buy furniture and everything like that, then it basically all they're doing is financing that $4,500, so they get that much cash back at closing, and they can free up some more funds. So it really, don't ask for it if they don't need it, because it's it's all the same to the seller. So if you're asking for 4,500 more, they're going to reduce the price by or increase the price by 4,500 in their minds.
Yeah.
If that makes,
It's kind
does
of
that
like
make
a
sense?
net offer. So if you're, asking for 5,000 on a $10,000 property, okay, your offer is really looking like 305,000. So that's kind of how I look at it when explaining to clients, so they can understand of like, okay, let's get here because we think the seller's going to like that, and then we'll add on as necessary. Anything else? Cool. All right. So again, just in line with all the other checklists that we've been through over the last couple of minutes, we want to make sure everything is clean as possible. Again, check everything, check every box, especially on page 1 of our purchase agreement with all the different things that are included with the property. That just, a lot of people will leave that whole entire section blank, and that's just messy, and we don't like that. So when I present offers to,
Do you want to pull up that contract right now?
not really.
Okay.
So it's too long. But when I throwing me off.
Sorry.
No, so when I submit offers, and especially regardless if they want it through .loop, just as a link, or if it's, someone who wants it as a PDF, just in a regular email, I always call everything a contract package or an offer package. And it's literally every single thing that we need. So pre-approval, contract itself, the purchase agreement, disclosures, any ABAs that might be needed, agency disclosure, and I try to have that obviously towards the top. You want to just have it all together, buttoned up, because a lot of times too, especially again, when you're in multiple offers, if you're submitting documents that don't have complete, signatures, or you're missing the MLS info, like the agent info on the bottom of our page 6, I find that really important to fill out. I just want to get it out of the way. I don't have to worry about it later. And usually the list agent is very thankful, because again, it's just one less piece of paperwork and less small detail that we need to worry about. Again, like the summary I had on the other page, that always goes on top or in the body of the email. And then again, just really up on that list agent, making sure that they know it's coming, they see it, they've received it, what their thoughts are, if I can get that out of them, and then when am I going to hear back? So
yeah. And I think that's, that's again, one thing that you'll start to notice as, we continue in this shift, because what shift is, right, is supply and demand. So as, the buyers kind of get more power in a way, then you'll have options for your clients to, shift your tactics a little bit, where, hey, now sometime in the future, near future, far future, I don't have a crystal ball. Back in the last shift, I would take, all I had was buyers when I started out, and I would take them to 5 houses. I'd have all the listing agents calling me, begging me to buy the house. And I'd be like, oh, we'll see, we'll consider this, consider that. And so it's kind of shifted from the market we've been experiencing over the last couple of years. So I don't want to talk too much about that, because we're not there yet. But when you do, then you really have to sharpen those skills from a buyer's agent's perspective, as far as, okay, well now, it's not writing this motivation letter and saying how great our client is. It's saying, well, we have 2 other houses we're looking at, so what can you do for me? Yeah. But again, we're not there yet.
Yeah, 2 other things that just came to mind. So at the end of this list, with consulting with your buyer, keep them keep in contact with them, let them know. I always tell people you should buffer maybe about 24 hours for a response. especially if we're submitting something late at night, I know after 6 or 7, just always, we don't know the work schedules. We don't know what's going on if they're in town, if we have to wait to hear for a response. And then the other thing too, is the more you get to know these agents on the list side, when you're presenting these offers, you're going to learn what they like and what they don't like, or the ways to talk to them. And that's really helpful. Because again, if you're fighting for this house, they're going to want to work with you because they know how you operate. They know your contracts are clean. You talk, it's helped us a lot building, again, going back, building the rapport with everybody else. Because in the end, we all want to win. So.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, the agent has the ear of the seller, and a lot of times it's not, I mean, we've been in several situations where on paper, the 3 different offers that we have are very similar. I mean, maybe one has an escalation clause, but the loan's a little more shaky. The other one's cash, but a little lower. And the more you can get them to know, like, and trust you as a colleague, as a professional, the more they're going to go to bat for you. They can't help it. It's human nature. We want to
be lovable.
Yeah. We want to do business with people that we know, like, and trust. So we want to get that deal done. On the flip side, if you're a real jerk on the phone with them and belittling or whatever, then, subconsciously they're going to poo-poo your offer in their head.
Yeah. Any ahas or questions from that? Before we move on more to the.
There was one question that said if the seller is an investor selling their property without an agent, is your packet or communication with them the same as if they did have an agent?
Yes, always just want to be in contact with whoever is in charge. If it's for sale by owner, an investor, an agent, an admin who maybe is doing more of the communication than the agent, just always be in contact. Yeah, I would never change anything.
Well, I think the differences with that sort of thing is you need to go into it kind of knowing that you're going to be playing both parts for a lot of the transaction.
Yeah.
If they're not a real estate agent and they're just a private investor selling a portfolio, it's more of the emphasis of making sure nothing falls through the cracks, making sure the dates are set, making sure everyone does what they're supposed to do on both ends is on you, because that's your
Selling
job.
yourself more.
Yeah, that's your job.
But just communication always is key.
That answer that question?
Sure.
I
Yeah.
assume yes.
Okay, let's move on. All right. Jake,
Okay, so
take it away.
excellent job, Morgan. So you've gone through that part with your buyer. You've crossed all your T's, dotted all your I's, you present the offer. I, as the list agent in this scenario, I receive the offer at this point, and this is kind of, putting that hat on as a listing agent. Should be kind of your process. So make sure the offer is complete. So one thing that you have to remember is that you as either a buyer's agent or a selling or listing agent, you're a reflection of your buyer in their, strength, qualifications, all that stuff. So if I get an offer and there's boxes missing, the addenda, the agency disclosure is not there, the agency disclosure isn't filled out correctly, they didn't include the lead base or the seller disclosure. I can't help but think that maybe this buyer is not so great, because why would they hire this, idiot to service them? This is like a $400,000 house and there's mistakes all over the place. This agent should know this. What don't I know about the buyer in this case? So it's more important than ever to not let those details hurt your cause. So like Morgan said, the appliances checklist, something that may seem as simple as that, make sure you go through it with them. A lot of times they don't, not to go off on a rabbit hole, but they might not want an appliance, they might want to make sure the stove is removed because they have their own. So go over those details, because when I receive them, when I receive that completed package, I'm assuming that everything on there is exactly how you want it. So I make sure that it's complete. I immediately, well, again, in this market, the buyer's agents probably called me and texted me and everything else to make sure that I receive the offer, but I let them know that I received the offer, and I let them know a realistic time that I can get back to them, after discussing it with the seller, so that's completely understandable and reasonable. You should know what kind of your seller schedule is, if they're kind of a D personality where you text them the numbers and they're like, take it, or, negotiate it, or boom, 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 or if they're kind of a little more analytical and slow to reach a decision, and they work 9 to 5, and the husband needs to come home and they need like a night to sleep on it. You need to set those expectations with the buyer's agent. We're so happy for your offer. Thank you so much. We're so excited about it. And oh, by the way, this is their schedule. I think realistically, maybe I'll get back to you tonight after I talk to them. More realistically, it'll probably be in the morning. Nothing to worry about. Again, very appreciative, but it's much better than saying, okay, I'll get back to you, and then not setting the expectation. They don't hear anything, the buyer freaks out, and it just leads to all sorts of stuff. So again, getting the offer to the seller in a timely manner is on you. That's your responsibility. Drop everything that you're doing. I don't care if you're on vacation, have someone handling your business at home. It's never okay to let an offer just sit there and not be dealt with. That's like one of the first fiduciary responsibilities you have. So you reach out to the seller, and their preferred communication method: texting, calling, emailing, voicemail. Keep a record that you're reaching out to them. If you can't get a hold of them, within, like, you obviously want to talk to them. You don't want to leave the details on the voicemail of the offer. But if I try that 3 or 4 times and it's getting late, I will often leave the information, the bullet points, or email it to them, just so there's a record that I did send it to them. I made attempts to reach them, because if, God forbid, they don't see it, the buyer, decides to rescind the offer, you want to, show that at least you made all reasonable efforts to get them that information. Again, create an executive summary. I do,
Spreadsheet.
yeah, I have my assistant do this, and I don't think I ever did it when I was an agent, or when I was a single agent. But she'll create kind of the same thing on the buyer's side, but it it just helps to kind of lay everything out that's important for your seller, whereas the summary that the buyer might have presented to you, or the buyer didn't present a summary, the buyer's agent didn't present a summary, you want to make sure that the important things are highlighted for your seller, and those are usually price, obviously, and like the net price. So if they're asking for closing costs, what that means, closing date, pre-approval, and like your opinion on how strong their pre-approval is. If you have questions, you want to share and discuss those questions that you have, not like saying this bank's crap, but just real life experience and questions that you might have.
Right. Like, do they close late? Have you had experiences with it?
Are they a big bank that has bad customer service? Are they, maybe a bigger bank that doesn't have portfolio products that might not fit with this particular thing? Just have that discussion, because again, if you don't have the discussion and the bank ends up, totally blowing things up, they're going to look to you, and not saying you have a crystal ball, but, have that discussion and raise any questions, and, just be upfront about it. Okay. Call buyer's agent. Same thing. I mean, confirm receipt. I won't, is that assuming that I already had the discussion with the seller? I mean, we'll pick that up later, but confirm receipt. Yeah. And then call lender. This again goes with what I was just talking about. If you can get a hold of the buyer's lender, what that conversation would be like is, and it's, you know, some of them don't like to talk to you, but most of them do because they want to get the deal done. Again, it's for their client's best interest. They're not going to give you any, you know, personal information, but, you know, I say to them, hey, how you doing? How's this buyer look? You know, and a lot of times you'll get a very frank answer. You know, I got all their documents, I got all their pay stubs, they look super strong, blah, blah, blah. Or you'll get, yeah, actually, I gave that pre-approval, but, you know, I'm still waiting for A, B, and C, and we really haven't documented their income, you know. And if you don't have that conversation or, you know, put forth all efforts to have that conversation, you're not serving your client.
On the flip side of that, I have a few lenders who that built into their process of help, you know, on the offering side, they'll call the list agent or at least email or do something, especially maybe if it's a smaller bank or someone I've worked with, but maybe other people haven't. You know, it's just an extra touch. And again, it just makes you stand out. And then Jake can go be like, wow, like, you know, Sean from cross country just called me and really filled me in saying he's strong. You know, he's already been through this. We can close in 2 weeks, blah, blah, blah. You look so much better. It's all about the communication.
Yep. And again, that create your outline document, that's basically the executive summary. You want to, when you're talking, when you prepare to speak on the offer or multiple offers with your seller, you need to know what the details are of that offer like that, or have them right in front of you. Like if they ask, what's the earnest money? You don't want to say, oh, let me check. I don't know, which one was that, blah, blah, blah. You know, you need to know what it is. You know what the price is. You need to know what the net amount is. You need to know when the closing is. You need to know when the possession is. All that stuff, have it down so that you sound more intelligent and like you know what you're doing, because you do know what you're doing and you are intelligent.
You're the expert.
You're the expert.
Okay, so just going back to this again, comes back into which option will happen. Any ahas from
Well,
that side of
let's
things?
hold on.
No?
Well, let me just go from a
This side.
kind of a listing perspective. So buyer makes the offer. I, as a listing agent, I have that conversation with the seller, and typically they're going to accept the offer as is. That is going to happen if there's either just one offer or there's an absolutely perfect offer, you know, or they haven't had any showings and they're, you know, if they accept it as is, they're ready to go, they're motivated. And, you know, it's important to remember, again, you're not doing their job if it's easy and they go from step 1 to 2 to 3, they accept the offer. You don't need to feel like you have to encourage them to negotiate, encourage them. You give them their options, because if you push them in a direction they're not comfortable with and their motivation is to get the deal done, and you encourage them to, you know, counter at a ridiculous amount and they lose the offer, you're not serving them. You know, you're serving them to get them what they want. So option A, they accept the offer because it's perfect or it meets all their standards, you know, as far as, you know, price and time and earnest money and all that stuff. Or you counter the offer and you say, you know, this is a great offer, but, you know, I love the price, the closing date. They actually need 3 months to close because they're finishing school or something like that. And then back to the negotiation table in each one. Or reject. I don't think I've ever rejected an offer in my, like, maybe, I mean, on multiple offers, sure, technically that's rejecting, but if you get an offer and you're a listing agent, you need to do every single possible thing to make those two people, you know, buyer and seller, meet in the middle, because that's serving your client. You know, if you get, you know, it's 25% under list price, and a lot of agents I've had, list agents, will call and say, this is ridiculous, I'm not negotiating, blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, the buyer just, you know, watched some, you know, Buying Houses for Idiots, and, you know, the rule of thumb is you always offer 25% lower, but, you know, they're totally ready to negotiate. It's just, you gotta pull the you know, your job is to sift through the emotion to bring your client back to, what's important to them. I understand how this sounds, I understand this is emotional, let me remind you, I'm sure it wasn't their intent to, to insult you. What do you think if you were to get them up to a number, what do you think is your absolute lowest amount? And get their mind off the emotion of it and really get them back to the numbers, and they might say, I'm absolutely not budging from this number. And then, then maybe it doesn't work out, but you still don't reject it. You always get them to counter in some fashion. And then eventually like it loosens up a little bit, after like the second or third counter back and forth, they're past the emotion and they're ready to move forward.
Real quick question.
Mhm.
Do you, I know you just mentioned to ask them what is their lowest number.
Mhm.
And I had a transaction when I worked with a buyer on the opposite end, and they told me what their highest number they would go, and I did not ask for it. So lo and behold, the seller came back at that number.
Mhm.
And the buyer's looking at me like, okay, you told him our number.
Mm.
So what I mean, and I lost that, and I couldn't, there was no way I could improve to them that I didn't tell them the number. And of course I did.
Right.
What I've learned, I tell my clients is, if I'm working with a buyer, don't tell me what your highest number is. Just keep it discussed between you and your spouse. And if I'm working with a seller, don't tell me what your lowest number is. Does that make sense? I mean, I know it makes sense, but
Sure.
have you had that situation where they came back at the lowest for the seller?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything, you'll also get yelled at if you sell the house in like 3 days. They'll be like, well, why didn't you price it higher? It's going too smoothly. It's not working out. I think it's a comfort thing to answer. And that's a great question. And I don't come right out and say, hey, what's your lowest number? It's more of a, it's a finessing of a gradual thing where at first because if you get a seller that is irate and emotional about feeling offended about their beautiful house they put their heart and soul into getting this low offer, your first job is to calm them down and get them away from the emotion and back to the numbers, because the numbers are going to be what they're left with, and if you allow them to blow up the deal because of their emotion, in my mind, you're not doing your job. So, I kind of ease into it where I'm like, well, is this, is there any, if they offered, if we could decide at 10,000 under price, would you walk from that deal? Would you absolutely walk from that deal after we've been through all this? Would it be worth, walking? Well, no, fine. If it was 10,000 less, I wouldn't. Okay. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of retract that. I don't ask for their bottom line, but I kind of assess in my head. And then a lot of times after going back and forth, they'll just say it. And, at that point, that's something for you to keep in the back of your head. But yeah, like you said, you don't come right out and ask it. I also don't say, don't tell me. I think, I think that particular client that you had is more an exception to the rule. I mean, usually, you get that rapport with the client and they're going to trust that you're out for their best interest. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes, yeah, it helps. Sure, definitely.
Good.
Anything else? I mean, that's pretty much it for us. I mean, any just the general questions about buying and receiving offers that we can answer for you.
I do have a question regarding earnest money. I know that that's the next step, or one of the next steps after presenting an offer and an offer is accepted. But one of the things, it used to be pretty much that our clients were writing a check that we delivered to a title company. Nowadays, most title companies have an ACH format where our client can go online and do it, or if we're representing the seller, we need them to we need to see that it gets done. Can you address the importance of the timeliness of that as a step that makes sure that we really do have an accepted offer because of the consequences if the earnest money is not done at the proper time?
Great point.
Yeah. I mean, I encourage, especially with ACH, I mean, again, everyone has their own comfort levels. But I mean, ASAP, the list agent's gonna start asking for it. Like, it's one thing if maybe it's a weekend and they're only comfortable with wiring funds. Okay, but as soon as that Monday comes around, like, well, let's go. But really, just as soon as possible, and really too, with when making the offer and writing it, I just, from the beginning, like, we have 4 days to do this if they take our offer. So just prepare now to be sending that money in whichever way you're comfortable.
Yeah,
Well-
and it's one of those things also that I think if for a newer agent, it could be uncomfortable to ask your client to take out their checkbook, but it's kind of, it's a moment of truth, it's they're writing a check, you're making a record of it. The listing agent is looking at that check and assuming that if they accept it, it's money in the bank. So, I always, if at all possible, you don't do a note, right? You write the earnest money check out, you take a picture of it, you include it in the offer packet, and then you follow up with it after you get it accepted to absolutely make sure that gets deposited in accordance with the contract.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure you've, again, heard it a million times, but that is one of the number one, causes of lawsuits in real estate is mishandling of earnest money. And it's a very simple thing. It just kind of, if you're doing a million things, it can kind of get lost in the cracks as far as the timing and accordance with the contract that needs to get deposited. But absolutely take care of that.
And also just get confirmation from the buyer too. If it's, like, I'll be like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, did you submit your earnest money? They'll be like, no, but we're doing that first thing in the morning. Or yes, we already did it. We just went on the website. Thank you for sending that to me. And then title, once they actually have it or back in the office, they'll send a receipt. So it's just kind of making sure confirmations are coming from everywhere.
Okay. One other thing, though, that gets put on our plate as the agent, when our offer is accepted and our buyer is selected, the title company, before our client can go to the title company's website to make the ACH deposit of earnest money, we as the agent need to make sure that all of the contract documents get to the title company so they can create a file for it, enabling the buyer to go to the website to do the earnest money deposit online.
So a lot of title companies, at least in the ones that, with GM and a couple of the other ones that I'm most comfortable using or have worked with more often, you can, and I know I did this for my own house a few years ago, you just put an address with your earnest money. So if it's 123 Main Street, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they're going to put in their numbers, they're going to put in the 3,000, and then it will go to the file. Just sometimes it's the weekend and you just need to get that earnest money in. It will go to where it needs to go. And then also to just be reaching out to title, whoever the contact is, and getting the contract to them as soon as possible as well. It doesn't get lost. It's all, shouldn't get lost, but yeah, it's usually all labeled by the address and the client. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay.
Makes sense to me.
Great. Any other questions, guys?
So just to sum up, if you have a question, ask,
Always ask.
It's way better to be more detailed than not detailed, or go overboard with due diligence and the detail and the communication with your client on the front end. You're writing the offer, make sure you ask all the questions, ask them again, have that conversation about all the important things and all the scenarios that, have to do with their life and their timeline and their bank account and their family and things that could go wrong, so that, for their benefit, because your job is to ask those questions so that you can transfer it to a document that is glowing and says, pick me and, work with me and do all that. So do your homework. And then on the selling side, same thing. Sit down, take a deep breath and have those conversations. Remember, don't get intimidated by your sellers. If they bite your head off because of, what the offer is or any reason they had a bad day, take a deep breath. Remember, you're the professional. It's not personal. I've had, I wouldn't say friends, but
Frenemies.
acquaintance clients, that I've never seen act a certain way, get emotional and rip my head off. And it's my job to just calm them down and get them to a point where they get back to what will affect them and their family and their future and where they're moving to, and remind them of the other side. If it doesn't work out, if you don't take this offer that is less than you wanted, but we haven't had an offer in 3 months, then what happens? Can you afford 2 mortgages, one, for this house and one in the new place? Is it going to affect your timeline? And get them to that place of, potential future pain so that, they can come back and get past their emotion so that you can work for your clients and have success.
Yeah. If you guys ever need any help or have a question or want to run something by us, we're always available. Just call, text, email, Facebook, carrier pigeon, whatever. We'll help.
Don't Facebook text me. I don't read them.
Text me, just text me. Cool.
Okay.
That's it for us.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Happy New Year. Much success. Go get it.
Thank you, guys.